Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Interpretation, can you do a 5 count on the French channel, please? Merci, Anne. Est-ce que tu peux faire un compte de 5 sur the English channel? Merci.
Oups, mon micro n'était pas ouvert. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call us to order. It's 9:33. This is the 20th meeting this term of council of the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee. Welcome, everyone, today. Our main item on our agenda will be our portion of the 2026 budget, so we'll get to that in just one moment. I do want to acknowledge that we gather today on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe First Nations people, who are the original inhabitants of these lands, and we honor them. I do want to turn to our committee coordinator to conduct a roll call, please.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Desroches.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Luloff.
Good morning.
Conseiller Plante. Councillor Skalski.
Here.
Vice Chair Hill.
Present.
And Chair Brockington, you have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, confirmation of minutes from our 16th of October 2025 meeting. Assuming everyone's had a chance to review them, are the meeting minutes of October 16th, 2025 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is the 2026 draft operating and capital budget for the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee. Before we begin, we do have a procedural motion, which will be to add the budget documents to the agenda, and I will look to Vice Chair Hill to read the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attendu que le document budgétaire provisoire de fonctionnement et de mobilisation.
Whereas the 2026 draft operating and capital budget documents for the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee were circulated and published after being tabled at Council on November 12, 2025, which is after the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee agenda publication date. Therefore, be it resolved that, pursuant to Section 89.3 of the Procedure Bylaw, the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee approve that the budget documents be added to the agenda of Thursday, November 20th, 2025.
So again, colleagues, this is procedural in nature, simply to add the budget documents to our agenda. Is that motion, do we approve that now? We do approve that now. So is that motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, we will now receive staff presentation on our portion of the budget. Before we entertain questions from committee members, we do have 5 delegates who will be presenting this morning. So hold your questions until we complete the delegation phase. So good morning to the front bench here. It's great to see you all. I think I'll introduce both General Manager Pro and our City Treasurer Rogers at this time, and then you can introduce staff that are here as well. So who would like to start off? General Manager Pro?
Thank you, Chair Brockington. Good morning, members of committee. Here with us this morning, we have our Director of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, Roger Chapman. We have our Chief of Ottawa Fire Services, Chief Paul Hutt. Chief Pierre Poirier is with us here this morning as well from the Ottawa Paramedic Service. And we have Beth Gooding here at the front table with our Public Safety Service. And on the side bench over here, we have our other services in EPS, which includes our Public Policy Development Team for EPS. That's led by Valerie Bietlo, who will be retiring within the next month or so. So she's joined by Samantha Montroy this morning. That's going to be help leading that team through that transition. We also have Allison Stewart here from our Bylaw Services team, and Richard Bruckshire, who's our Manager of Business and Technical Support Services for EPS, which in our department includes Event Central. So I'll hand it over to Cyril here to provide an overview of EPPSC's budget for 2026, and we'll jump into the slides as well here as we go.
Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, members of the committee. I think today you had the benefit of having 3 chiefs at the table, Chief Hutt, Chief Pierre, and myself, Chief Finance Officer. So I think it's one of the few committees where you have three chiefs at the table. So you can go on to the next slide. I'm going to give you a little bit of a high-level overview of the budget for this committee. Talk a little bit about the key investments on the operating side, capital side. Then I'll hand it over to Ryan and team to go through some of the key initiatives and the key investments as they align to the term of council priorities. So you can jump to the next slide. So overall, this budget, the gross expense budget is 442 million. What that reflects is a 7.34% increase over 2025. I like to remind committees as I go through this process at each committee, we don't allocate a flat line percentage to each department. We work with each department in terms of where they're at and what their needs are in terms of their existing budget and where things are going in the next year's budget. So as an example, this one's going up by 7.34%. ESA planning housing, that one was going up by 3.5%. So there's not a flat line allocation across the board. There's many different parameters that go into the budget. Now we fund that from the different sources. The recoveries and allocations, these are charges that we charge to other areas. In this budget, the 12.6 is mainly a couple of components. It's the corporate radio system. So that's done out of this shop. And then we kind of charge to OPS, Ottawa Police, Transit, and a couple others. We also have corporate security here. So the corporate security costs, staff time, and all that comes into this department. And then we allocate that out to the facilities team. And there's a couple other small ones that we allocate out. On the revenue side, two main components here. This is made up of the provincial funding that we receive for paramedics is the biggest component, just over 90 million. And then we have the next piece is basically the bylaw revenues, parking enforcement, property standards, et cetera. So those user fees. And then that kind of flows down to what we call as a net requirement. So that, 295 million, which is really, funding that we kind of got to use from our other sources of revenue at the city. Overall, in this committee, we are adding 29 FTEs, 23 on the paramedic side and 6 additional in bylaw. I think is a good opportunity to remind this committee in this term, there's been significant investments, well-needed investments, lying back to our plans. On the paramedic side, 141 paramedics this term, which really is out Pierre out in his approach. We had some new fire. There's no new fire in this budget, but the fire did receive FTEs in the last 2 budgets with the Canada North and the transition of the Stittsville fire station. And bylaw has been adding resources, each budget in this term as well. So it's important to note. From a capital budget perspective, just over 15 million. And again, part of this term of council, we really integrated the climate change lens into our capital and into our overall budget. Not a big impact here when it comes to climate change, more on the minor contribution side, as expected. Really where that contribution comes from is new fleet vehicles, new small equipment, not things of major significance from a climate change as expected. So overall, again, that's 15 million with the 26 projects. So I'll move on to the next slide. This is really just a breakdown of the different areas. So as you can see, fire is the most expensive service at the table and kind of going across in terms of how we distribute the overall budgets to support them. And then we just kind of break it down in terms of the different revenue from the previous slide. Next slide. On the capital side, how is this funded? So again, much of this funding is really for small equipment type things in terms of the service, mainly funded from reserve. So this would be our capital, citywide capital reserve. So again, as a reminder, we collect revenue in, all the operating revenue comes in. And if you recall from tabling, there's a slide that I often label as capital formation costs, just over 400 million that comes out of our operating and goes into our reserves. So really that's the cash component of paying for the capital. There's a little bit of debt, and that debt is really aligned to some buildings and facilities. We do work on obviously all of our facilities, so we add a little bit of debt in that area. And then on the grant side, revenue side, there's 2 small grants there for CBRN and USR, which is really funding that we get from other levels. Next slide. So as I mentioned, a little bit of a breakdown by service area here in terms of where the capital is going. Some of the bigger items from a fire perspective would be the fire SCBA replacement. That's at 3.6 million. And then from a buildings perspective, we have another 3.6 in terms of investments into the various fire stations and rehab type work. Next slide. As communicated at tabling and as part of the transmittal report and the budget documentations, Again, the 45 million of service efficiencies that we have in this budget and the combined total of just over 250. In this committee, that allocation is basically 1.6 million, 1.579. I'll start from the bottom and kind of go up to the top. So the facilities, operations, and efficiencies, most of those efficiencies are coming from savings from utilities, so natural gas. If you might have heard me talk about the carbon tax on fuel, which is a significant savings in this budget. There's also carbon tax savings on natural gas. So really, that's the allocation here. So all those costs kind of come into Dan's shop, Dan Shenye, and Rec and Culture and Facility Services. Then we allocate that back out to the different services from the facility. So these are the savings that you would see in the various facilities for this team. Discretionary savings. So basically in the overall budget, there's 1.5 million on discretionary savings. So the past number of years, we've been in what we call discretionary spending freeze and discretionary hiring pause, which I'll speak to in a second. So really, these are costs in terms of being more efficient on our travel, our conferences, office supplies, et cetera. So that's the allocation to this department there. Fleet efficiencies, mainly fuel. Again, the carbon tax. Overall, we're getting some significant savings from the carbon tax. We also get savings from our edging contracts. So as a reminder, I'll speak to more of this at FinCorp. We do buy edging contracts in the market. So from an investment perspective, we buy contracts on diesel fuel. Right now for the 2026 budget, I believe that's at $1.16 per liter. If you drive up the street and look at the local price at the pump, diesel runs about $1.50 or so. So we're able to buy contracts in the marketplace at $1.16. So we yield savings there, which is efficient use of dollars. And then on the workforce management saving strategy. So this is basically what we have at the city is what we deem gapping. So basically we budget for what we deem full-time equivalents. So if there's a budgeted position for this entire team, we have the full compensation budget there. If someone leaves, and it takes at least 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the service, to restaff. So we budget from a full cost perspective that we're going to assume that 100% of our employees are working every day and are in those positions. Then we assign what we call a gapping target, and that's roughly about 3%, which is a kind of a credit. So basically accounts for that turnover in terms of staffing time, vacancies, et cetera. The last number of years, we've been actually running a bit over on our 3% target. So what we've done this year as part of the strategy is we've increased the overall target by 0.5%. Not every department runs at 3%, but we did allocate an additional 0.5% to where departments were at. This service doesn't have 3% because most of their services are frontline services, but there is still capacity in terms of where we've been seeing our actual costs come in that we can absorb just a little bit of efficiency. So that's what that reflects is the allocation to this department. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything for frontline services. The organization will continue to staff as needed. If a paramedic leaves tomorrow, Pierre will be filling that paramedic the next day or as soon as he can. It does not put any impact to frontline service operations. If there's more of an administrative position that leaves, maybe we take some time to reconsider if we need to restaff that, or it takes a little longer to restaff those types of positions. So there's no impact to frontline services. It realigns to our strategy that we have had in place for the past 3 years and what we're actually running on savings. So with that, I'll pass it back to, I'm not sure if it's Ryan or Roger.
Thank you, Cyril. Given the increased demand for parking control in the suburbs and in school zones particularly, 5 temporary FTEs were created in 2025 for parking control to allow for restructuring of parking beat assignments and for specialized school zone enforcement. The 6th FTE is for supervisor of property standards and zoning enforcement. The addition of more officers to the team in 2025 greatly affected the span of control for the 2 supervisors. Currently responsible for supervising 34 officers and 6 summer students, who conduct some of the most complex and resource-intensive bylaw investigations. These 6 new positions improve call response and address growth, while aligning with Council's priority of making the city more livable and safe. The new ticketing devices support the issuance of parking tickets and seamlessly integrate with Service Ottawa's case management system, all while ensuring compliance with updated legislative requirements. The new highly anticipated online business licensing application and payment system will be launching in 2026, reducing the need for printing materials and offering clients a better, more convenient and accessible experience. The on-demand accessible taxi pilot continues into 2026 with the goal of supporting residents and providing reliable, safe, and accessible mobility options. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Good morning. Ottawa Fire Service key budget investments are, as a result of a very productive and collaborative bargaining exercise with the association, we were able to undertake a 5-year contract settlement from 2023 to 2028. In addition, in 2026, we're seeing a $3.6 million investment towards our final installment for our self-contained breathing apparatus, probably the most relied on piece of protective equipment that we have for our members for their health and safety. From continuous improvement initiatives, reducing false fire alarms continues to be Ottawa Fire Service's priority. This program supports compliance, ensuring alarm systems are working as intended for the safety of the occupants and reducing unnecessary responses by first responders. The Ottawa Fire Service budget highlights align with Council's priority being a city that has affordable housing and is more livable for all. On that, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Chief Boyer.
Next slide, please. The Ottawa Paramedic Service is pleased to report that the investment plan continues to show results for our community. There are 23 new paramedics in the scheduled for the 2026 budget. We expect that to continue to support the improved service delivery and reduction in level 0 events in our city. In support of those paramedics, we also have the purchase of ambulances and equipment to support that operation. We also have new provincial funding that is scheduled, recognizing that the province has fiscal funding years, so that oftentimes when our city commits to new staff, the funding follows in the next fiscal year. And that's once again an expectation and occurs on a regular basis. In terms of service improvements, we have rural paramedics. We've assigned specifically in response to councillors' inquiries from last year. We've improved and added to our service delivery in the rural areas, particularly in Kinburn, Metcalfe, and Richmond. With respect to an incredible service delivery enhancement was the medical priority dispatch system that was implemented in May of last year. It's resulted in significant changes and improvements in the delivery of service to our community. We continue with our community paramedic programs, which have resulted in a decrease in the number of patients who actually end up in the hospital and emergency departments. We expect to receive provincial funding to continue to support those activities. And our mental well-being response team continues to be a success story where we're able to provide the service that people expect within the community. Merci.
So most of the budget 2026 investments for the public safety service align with Council's first priority, which is a city that has affordable housing is more livable for all. At the end, though, I'll also highlight an investment that supports the third priority, a city that is green and resilient. Just a few key budget highlights. Il y a un investissement de $520 000 pour un
There is a
contrat
$520,000 for a 10-year contract to upgrade the city's corporate radio system. We will also invest $320,000 towards the city's security services.
$20,000 is earmarked to refit space for our emergency operations center. And this is really important because it helps us be ready for any emergency at any time. Before I close, just a couple of highlights in terms of ongoing work. I'd be remiss not to mention our new public emergency notification system, Ottawa Alert. Residents can download the app or subscribe at ottawa.ca. And finally, as mentioned, we have an investment linked to Council's third priority, which is a city that is green and resilient. So our Office of Emergency Management is working closely with the Strategic Initiatives Department. On Climate Ready Ottawa, the city's climate resiliency strategy, their budget will be considered on December 8th and includes about 725,000 in investments for extreme weather preparedness and community resiliency. And this includes equipment to support residents in need and funding to help local organizations strengthen their preparedness. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to the next presentation. I'll just give clerks a minute to load that one up. There we go. So I was able to introduce the team at the onset of this meeting. I'm very fortunate to lead such an outstanding team in this department. Together, we lead dedicated teams of firefighters, paramedics, enforcement officers, dispatchers, inspectors, security advisors, emergency management coordinators, policy specialists, and critical support teams, united by one shared purpose: to protect lives, property, and the quality of life in the city of Ottawa. Ensemble, nous dirigeons une équipe dévouée.
Together, we direct a very united team aiming at a common goal: protecting life and the quality of life in the city of Ottawa.
Before I begin, I want to recognize and thank our finance team, and particularly Cyril, Svetlana, and Janet, for their outstanding work in developing this budget. Their collaboration ensures we're able to align operational priorities while remaining fiscally responsible. Today, I'll provide a brief update on our operational performance in the context of Budget 2026. Next slide, please. Demand for 911 and 311 continues to rise, yet EPS remains efficient, effective, and consistently meets or exceeds most service standards. Our success is being driven by three factors: strategic investments, as Cyril laid out earlier for this term, a strong focus on workforce wellness, and the use of technology and innovation to improve efficiency. Nos bons résultats reposent sur les investissements stratégiques.
Our good results are based on strategic investments and the workforce wellness and tech-driven efficiencies.
Emergency and Protective Services is one of the city's largest and most interconnected departments. We have close to 2,200 full-time equivalent positions, representing a skilled and diverse workforce supported by QP 503, CIPP, and the OPFFA. We operate 64 facilities across the city, including headquarters, communication centers, 45 fire stations, 16 paramedic posts, and specialized sites such as our fire training center, the Fire Prevention Office, the Security Operations Center, and the city's spay-neuter clinic. We also operate a fleet of close to 500 vehicles that allow us to deliver frontline services every day. Chacun de ces éléments contribue à la santé.
Each of these elements contribute to the health, the safety, and security of our residents.
Demand has increased over the past 3 years. Fire 911 calls are up more than 15%. Paramedic 911 calls have increased by 5%, and bylaw and regulatory services calls have grown by 6%. These pressures reflect a growing and increasingly complex city, reinforcing the importance of continued investment and innovation. Despite these pressures, our performance remains strong. Our firefighters are arriving faster. Our paramedics are meeting their most critical response time standards for the first time since 2020, and our teams in bylaw and regulatory services continue to meet or exceed every priority call type. Behind every metric is a resident whose day or life is changed for the better. We continue to pursue efficient and responsible service delivery. Fewer vehicles are required per incident, meaning our resources are being used more effectively, and paramedic level 0 minutes have dropped by nearly 80% since 2022, ensuring more units are available when residents need them most. Cela signifie des délais
This means that our response time are faster and better taking charge of the residents.
Faster and outcomes are improving. These results are the product of deliberate strategies. Ces résultats découlant des stratégies délibérées. We are strengthening workforce wellness through additional supports, including in-house psychologists and early intervention tools such as emotional resilience training. Council has helped stabilize our fire response force by approving employee status for our volunteer firefighters. We are ensuring calls are directed to the most appropriate resource, whether through fire prevention, the mental health and well-being response teams, or expanding community paramedicine. We're also advancing critical technology upgrades, including improvements to our dispatch systems, enhanced rural deployment models, and new digital tools that increase reliability and accuracy. Finally, we continue to deliver meaningful improvements through the Service Review Program and the Agile Government Work Group. This includes the new Fire False Alarm Bylaw, the upcoming Special Events Bylaw that will have a more streamlined permitting process, ongoing modernization of business licensing, and a review of our 911 call intake function. Looking towards the future, EPS is modernizing across the board. Major projects are on the go, including Next Generation 911, station alerting and corporate radio upgrades, electronic patient care record systems, modernized permitting, licensing, and asset management systems. Chacune de ces initiatives améliore la
Each of these initiatives improve the reliability, transparency, and efficiency.
These initiatives also directly support several term of council priorities, from strengthening mental health supports and improving response times to enhancing our preparedness for extreme weather events, modernizing business licensing, and supporting economic development through our highly engaged Event Central team. Now, of course, with growth comes risk. Bien entendu, la croissance s'accompagne de risques.
So with growth, there's risks.
Mitigate risks associated with population growth in a growing city, workforce pressures and technology needs through proactive planning, preventative maintenance, and investing in key priority areas. Looking ahead, we remain strategic, data-driven, and focused on long-term sustainability. This term, Council has approved significant investments in paramedic, fire, bylaw, and security operations, along with expanded wellness initiatives and an updated fire station location study. Looking ahead, we're planning for a new fire training center, a Paramedic West deployment facility, and retrofits to our bylaw headquarters and to our emergency command center. Nous planifions aujourd'hui pour
Today,
répondre aux besoins
we're
de
planning
demain.
in preparation for the needs in the futures.
So in summary, demand is high, but performance remains strong. Strategic investments are paying off. Our people are well supported, and it shows in the results, and our community is better supported and better equipped because of the work that we do together. En résumé, notre
In short,
collectivité est mieux protégée grâce
our
au
community
travail
is
que
better
nous
protected
accomplissons ensemble.
because of all the work that we're doing
Chair,
together.
members of committee, this is a department that delivers. We're proud of our results, confident in our direction, and committed to continuous improvement. Thank you for your ongoing support and partnership. Nous vous remercions de votre soutien, de
Thank
votre
you very much for your support and your
partenariat
partnership.
continu. Our team would be pleased to take any questions that this committee might have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, General Manager and City Treasurer and your staff for the presentation today. Thank you for the presentation you just went through to really emphasize how the resources that we allocate in our budget completely aligns with the strategic priorities of Council and of the people of Ottawa. So that's very important to see that we have made significant progress this term of Council in every division of this department. And when you look at our metrics, when you look at the data that we provide to the public, and you see our annual reports, we are making good progress. And so I thank all committee members for taking the budget seriously, for your questions, and understanding that when we align resources with priorities, our professional staff in the city deliver. So I thank you very much. I'm going to ask the vice chair before we receive delegations to read the budget roadmap motion on the floor now. So not only are committee members familiar with the motion, but members of the public and our delegates as well. So Vice Chair Hill, if you could just read that motion onto the floor at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee recommend that Council, sitting as Committee of the Whole, approve the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee 2026 draft operating and capital budgets as follows. 1. Emergency and Protective Services Department, General Manager's Office and Business Support Services, Operating Resources Requirement, page 2. 2, Public Safety Service as follows. A, User Fees, page 5. B, Operating Resource Requirement, page 4. 3, Ottawa Fire Service as follows. A, User Fees, pages 8 to 11. B, Operating Resource Requirement, page 7. 4, Ottawa Paramedic Service as follows. A, User Fees, page 14. B, Operating Resource Requirements, page 13. 5, Bylaw and Regulatory Services as follows. A, User Fees, pages 17 to 25. B, Operating Resource Requirements, page 16. 6, Public Policy Development Operating Resource Requirement, page 27. 7, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee Capital Budget, pages 28 to 29. Individual projects listed on pages 50 to 74.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So we will deal, that is the actual motion. So we'll deal with that once delegations and our questions to staff have passed. So at this time, I'd like to welcome delegations forward. Colleagues, we have 5 this morning that we'll hear from. The first is Jenna McMillan from the Ottawa Firefighters Association. And our delegations will sit at the seat here at the end of the table. All delegations have up to 5 minutes. When there is 1 minute remaining, I will simply say 1 minute to give you a heads up. And if you're still speaking, I will cut you off politely, but everyone will be treated the same. So welcome, Ms. McMillan, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Brockington, Chair Hill, members of the committee, Chief Hutt, and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today and to listen to my feedback regarding the EPPS budget for 2026. Currently, there are 165 men and women working in fire stations across Ottawa, ready to place themselves in harm's way to protect the lives of the citizens and guests of this city. This was the case yesterday. It will be the case tomorrow, regardless of the weather, regardless of the hazards, and regardless of the ever-increasing call volumes your firefighters face year after year. Being a firefighter in Ottawa comes with risks, many of which we can mitigate and account for through training and skills developed over a career. However, there are hazards from our job which we cannot fully remove from our workplace. These come in the form of carcinogens and toxins that we harvest at fire scenes that become deposited on our clothing and equipment and come back to our fire halls from Canada to Orleans and every station in between. It is therefore unsurprising that we see high rates of cancer among our active and retired membership. This is something that an investment by you can help to solve. The Ottawa Fire Service has implemented several programs to mitigate these risks. They have provided 2 sets of bunker gear for all firefighters. They have purchased new industrial washers and extractors to clean our bunker gear. And they have helped facilitate coverage for cancer screenings in the hopes of early detection. These are all positive investments on the health of our firefighters. As the representative for the 1,013 OPFFA members, I am sincerely thankful for this commitment that this committee and OFS have made to date. I would also like to acknowledge that I believe that that is just a start. The proposed budget for 2026 dedicates funding to numerous building and infrastructure projects. What I would like to see are commitments to further the well-being of this city's firefighters through sensible and measured actions, which are proven to reduce the risks that we face from occupational illness. as well as infrastructure changes to protect the dignity of our members within their workplace. To protect us from harmful toxins that we bring back on our fire station gear and from PFAS, which is engineered into our bunker gears, we need properly ventilated storage facilities for our gear within all of the fire stations. An installation of these storage rooms is a critical investment necessary to protect our members from the continuous and chronic exposures that they suffer within their workplace. It is not just the firefighting coats and pants that absorb carcinogens from our fires, but our uniforms, which are worn underneath and are against our skin, experience the same exposure. Having a washer and dryer to launder our contaminated clothing is reasonable and attainable ask. It is something common within the fire service and stations across this nation, but is unfortunately not universally seen here in Ottawa. I see the installation of laundry facilities in all fire stations as a low-hanging fruit and minimal capital investment, which will deliver as a return investment, as all preventative strategies tend to do. I also believe that this will help keep these toxins out of our personal homes and away from the laundry facilities, which are used by our partners, our children, and members of our family. Finally, you heard me mention the dignity of our members earlier in my report. We as firefighters are as proud as they come. We endure a lot, and we do so in the most part in silence. I am here to speak for our members who struggle to have a voice. I'm here to tell you about our workplace, which we consider to be a home away from home. It is where we work with our colleagues for 24 hours at a time.
1 minute.
Some of these buildings were built in the 70s, long before new health and safety best practices and before women entered the fire service. They have open dorms, open showers, and lack pumping and menstrual infrastructure. It's 2025, and the fire service values our diversity in our skills, our trade, our language, race, gender, sex, and a lack of these infrastructures are not practices which respect an individual's dignity in a workplace setting. I'm asking for an investment on our aged and outdated stations so that we can show our membership that the City of Ottawa values our unique qualities, which makes us stronger as a service-based organization. In closing, I would like to highlight that the OPFFA and fire management team continue to foster and prioritize a healthy working relationship. This relationship and our aim to collaborate led to a recent signing and membership ratification of a new collective agreement. This was the first non-arbitrated agreement in over 2 decades. I am confident that together, the OPFFA and OFS will continue to improve our workplace within the budgetary confines that you ascribe and make them as safe as possible for our members. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll just see if there are any questions from my colleagues. Sorry, my screen is on the wrong. There are no questions at this time. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next delegate this morning is Doug Thomas from St. John Ambulance. Just press the button and you have up to 5 minutes as well. Please start when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, distinguished committee members. Excellent news from St. John Ambulance. Last evening, St. John Ambulance and the City of Ottawa signed a service level agreement. We think it's the first of its type in Canada. This will enable St. John Ambulance to deploy rapidly under the direction of the fire service. And I think it ties nicely into the whole budget concept, since we're going to support the fire service and ensure that their folks are doing what they really should be doing, and we'll take over where we can service or visit wellness checks here in the city. So it's great. It's active right now. This is not your grandfather's St. John Ambulance, and I've only been with St. John Ambulance for 3 years, and I've learned that quite rapidly. So I'll run through some facts. We like to think we're well known, yet kind of unknown. So here in the city, focused on the NCR, there are 57 first aid instructors. They delivered 883 first aid courses this year so far to 8,691 students, most of whom are residents of Ottawa. As a result, they become first responders. Within the medical first response category, We have 134 medical first responders. They're trained at the same level as our fire service and members of the OC Transpo Special Constable Corps. Those 134 medical first responders logged 26,745 volunteer hours in Ottawa so far. They attended 249 events, and they treated 694 patients, the majority of whom would have required hospital attention, but didn't because we stepped in. We operate an active therapy dog program. There are 48 therapy dog teams here in Ottawa at present, 7,890 local visits, mostly to retirement residences, schools, mostly deal with anxiety. And of those 48 therapy dog teams, 2,700 hours logged. As a result of Public Safety Canada's support, St. John Ambulance joins other first response agencies here in Canada. And in Ottawa, that means that we now have 22 fully deployable emergency response team members. Those members are ready to be deployed anywhere in Canada as part of a St. John Ambulance response, but primarily they're focused here in Ottawa. I mentioned the service level agreement, and that service level agreement ties into those 22 fully deployable members. We have 5 vehicles and 2 trailers. One of those vehicles was generously donated by the City of Ottawa 2 years ago. It's an ambulance. It continues to serve this community. We have a rapid assessment team that will have somebody on site to assist the fire service in under an hour. And then within 2.5 hours, a full crew would be on site with Zoom row tents and that sort of thing. Checking the time. We are currently part of Ontario Corps. And as a result of that membership, we're receiving an additional vehicle and training in preventable or suicide prevention. We have deployed to Iqaluit, Yellowknife, and Rapid Lake outside of the city. We were on standby all summer to assist with the fires in Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick, where St. John Ambulance was deployed. And we're engaged with the Ontario Emergency Planning Operations, and recently, through a tabletop exercise, provided a morgue to Rockland tabletop. We're looking at an arrangement with the Airport Authority here in Ottawa, where we would respond to airport emergencies in support of the Airport Authority. And again, well-known, unknown, so hopefully this time I've taken this morning has helped better assist everyone with St. John Ambulance's role. I would like to say that we've had an incredible relationship with the city to date. Councillor DeRoche, incredible, and Beth and your team, also amazing, fire service. So we stand by to assist, we stand by, we're ready, and again, an honor to be invited this morning and have some insight into your budget planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you escape, we do have a couple questions for you. I'll start with my colleague, Councillor DeRoche, and then Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Doug, for coming here today. I think it's the first for St. John Ambulance that I can recall. It's nice to see you again today. We saw you yesterday. It was a thrill to host St. John Ambulance, as well as the mayor and the chair and the vice chair, to celebrate this service level agreement, which I think is critical to strengthening the safety blanket of our city. We heard an excellent presentation by the staff that they're ready and they're structured and they're resourced, but there continues to be risks that we can benefit from great partnerships with St. John Ambulance, as you enumerated. Ironically, we were here at City Hall yesterday to celebrate the service level agreement, but also at the same time, the festivals were here as well. And you've played a big role in supporting the festivals as well, in terms of providing first aid care and support, and you've collaborated with the paramedics. So can you just elaborate on the work you've done at the festival levels, because it's been quite significant?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor DeRoche. 2 examples come to mind quickly. November 11th, just recently, we, under the paramedic service, deployed 42 uniformed personnel downtown to assist as many paramedics. And we operated a joint triage center with the paramedic service. So we're in the same space. We're dealing with the minor injuries, and then the major or more serious injuries move over to the paramedic service. It's amazing. During the King's visit, the paramedic service reached out to us and asked if we could deploy again a team. We put 25 people into play downtown on very short notice. And again, an honor to work with the paramedic service in that regard. We're a charity. We support other charities. Although we work on a donation basis, there are some that can't afford us or make a donation. In that case, we provide our service at no cost. That includes community groups, churches, schools. We're honored to do that.
Great, thank you for that. And no, I've seen over the years you do tremendous work. And again, I'm very thankful for the volunteers and staff for the work they're doing. I'm thrilled to see the partnership that we have with the city and the very positive relations. We know as well that your core function in terms of the first aid training, equipping people with these first aid skills are critical. If we do have a major disaster or a major incident, sometimes the first people on the scene is your neighbors. It's not the fire department or the paramedics because they're rushing to get there, but it's likely going to be your neighbors. So the more people that we can have trained in first aid will go a long way. You've also recognized many staff at the city, the paratransport constables, and various other people who've stepped up and saved lives. So I think that's important. Again, is a good example of the collaboration that we have, and look forward to more. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Doug, for the presentation this morning. It was fantastic to join you last night, and I want to kind of reiterate, I think, a little bit of what Councillor Darash was saying in terms of the importance of this service level agreement that was signed, and that we had the opportunity to join with you on last night. I think we see the need for that, and we see the evidence of that in some of the statistics that were reported earlier. We have had experiences several years ago, just in the aftermath of the pandemic, when our level 0 situation was a bit out of control. We had limited paramedic resources in order to be able to deploy, and I can't think of a more terrible experience for anyone to be in than to call 911 in probably the worst day of their life and know that there may be a gap in the service provision that they need. And it's this type of relationship that provides that capacity enhancement that will allow us to continue to improve that trend of having availability of these paramedic resources and our safety resources in general across the city. So I think we can't understate the value of that service level agreement. I appreciate the great work. It's always wonderful when I go to Clark Fields, whether it's Canada Day or the Indian Food Festival or, all of those events, and I see your guys out there, you as well. And it's greatly appreciated to have you guys out in the community supporting us. So thank you very much to the whole team.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your presentation today. We appreciate it. Thank you. Next, I'll call on Misha Kaplan from Team Rubicon.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. We see you online. You have up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, committee members, distinguished delegates, and guests. I'm here today in my capacity as the Chief Executive Officer of Team Rubicon Canada. I'm grateful to be able to provide feedback to this draft budget process, specifically from the perspective of a national disaster response organization that has a steadily growing presence here in Ottawa. Next slide, please. For those of you not familiar with our organization, Team Rubicon Canada is a veteran-led humanitarian nonprofit organization that serves communities before, during, and after disasters and crises. Next slide, please. The Team Rubicon concept first began in 2010 in response to the earthquake in Haiti. The concept came to Canada in 2016 during the Fort McMurray wildfires, meaning that we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary in 2026. Since our founding, we've conducted over 100 operations across Canada and abroad. We've operated in 9 out of 10 provinces, and we now have formal memoranda of understanding with 3 of these provinces, including Ontario. As a charity, we are 100% reliant on government grants, charitable donations, and corporate partnerships. And we're very proud to be part of the federal government's humanitarian workforce program, as well as the provincially managed Ontario Corps program. Next slide, please. Our volunteers are the real backbone of our organization. Our gray shirts, as we call them, now number well over 4,000 across the country, including a very strong presence here in Ottawa. These gray shirts come from 3 groups: military veterans, active and retired first responders, and skilled civilians. And what these individuals share is a willingness to deploy into austere environments, significant experience working under pressure, strong emergency management leadership skills, and a relentless commitment to service. Next slide, please. Team Rubicon works across the entire emergency management spectrum, from mitigation to preparedness and into response and recovery operations. We often differentiate ourselves by being the organization that is willing and able to do what other NGOs won't or can't do. Next slide, please. Our particular niche is technical humanitarian response, which is best represented through several of our core capabilities, including incident management, debris removal, disaster mapping and damage assessments, hazard mitigation, volunteer management, and technical training. Something that differentiates us in particular is our ability to deploy incident management teams, or IMTs, as our organization is both the user and trainer of the Incident Command System, or ICS. That means we can either operate independently or embed seamlessly within an existing municipal emergency management command structure. Next slide, please. When a government asks for our help, they're essentially activating a rapidly deployable force multiplier. Because we rely primarily on volunteers to execute our response work, we provide a cost-effective and highly flexible auxiliary capability to government agencies and emergency management professionals. Another one of our strengths is interoperability. We can operate independently under our own command structure for extended periods of time, or we can slot directly into a higher command structure if the situation calls for it. Ultimately, everything we do is aimed at one goal: helping communities build resilience, not just during disasters, but before and after them as well. Next slide, please. Although we operate across Canada and globally, Ottawa is one of our most active metro regions. Not only do we have the second highest number of gray shirts in the country at 515, we're also proud to have conducted over 35 events here in Ottawa in 2025 alone, including emergency management training and mitigation projects. And in April of this year, we were incredibly proud to have deployed a group of gray shirts to support the flooding in West Carleton. In this instance, we were able to get boots on the ground within less than 12 hours of being activated, demonstrating, I think, both our flexibility and rapid response capability. And now, in hopes of formalizing our relationship with the City of Ottawa, the city is considering a service level agreement with Team Rubicon, which would formally position us as a service provider within the Municipal Emergency Management Plan. Next slide, please.
1 minute.
In closing, my ask is this. As you consider the 2026 draft budget, I would encourage the committee to view Team Rubicon Canada as a cost-effective, experienced, and rapidly deployable partner that already possesses a substantial footprint here in Ottawa, backed by significant operational experience and capability. Whether it's severe weather events, major seasonal flooding, widespread power outages, or anything else that exceeds routine municipal capability, Team Rubicon Canada is a dependable, professional, and adaptable emergency management partner that increases community resilience without expanding the city's permanent emergency preparedness budget. Thank you very much, councillors. Again, I appreciate having the opportunity to tell you more about our organization and to provide input into this budget process. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan, for your presentation. We sincerely appreciate it. I don't see any questions at this time from colleagues. Sorry, okay, I didn't see that up. Okay, go. Sorry about that. Councillor Kelly and then Luloff. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Kaplan, for your presentation today. And I know I don't have any specific questions for you. I just wanted to thank you as the councillor for West Carleton March. I've had the opportunity to interact and work with your volunteers, I believe, on multiple occasions, but certainly last spring. And I even got one of those gray shirts given to me by some of your volunteers, which was greatly appreciated as well. So just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for supporting my community and the City of Ottawa when we most need it.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I very much appreciate that. It makes me very happy to hear that you were impressed with our volunteers, and very happy to hear that you have a gray shirt as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Luloff.
Hi, Mr. Kaplan. I just want to thank you as well for the work that you and your volunteers do, and beyond that, for also providing a platform for which you provide meaning and purpose after service for those who have served in uniform. You are really leveraging the skills, hard-earned skills of our women and men that have served in uniform, and for that, I can't offer any higher praise. I really, really appreciate the work that you do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, as a veteran yourself, I very much appreciate hearing that praise from you, so thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for your comments. Seeing no other hands at this time, Mr. Kaplan, thank you for your delegation this morning. It's appreciated. I will now call on Sandra Theracon from the Metropolitan Bible Church. Good morning and welcome to you. Just press the button there on the microphone. And like everyone else, you have up to 5 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this time. And it's just been very insightful to be here today and to just hear just the proactiveness in the city for emergency preparedness. So in the past 10 years, Ottawa has faced several times of crisis in which city officials have been challenged to meet the needs of all of their citizens, especially those in the vulnerable sector. The Ottawa faith community has been a vital partner during most of these crises, filling in the gaps where the city was unable to meet all the needs of their community members. Following the tornadoes that hit Ottawa and surrounding region in the fall of 2018, a task force was formed to assess how the church community in the Ottawa region could provide a united and caring response to our city and region during a disaster or critical event. Several churches came together, and out of that was birthed Respond Ottawa. I'm here to represent Respond Ottawa and talk a little bit about what we do. Respond Ottawa has been active in assisting during the flood seasons, the COVID pandemic, and the 2022 derecho event. Respond Ottawa does not replace or undermine any existing relief efforts from the government or any other organizations. Instead, it looks to identify the gaps in those efforts and to find appropriate solutions to fill in those gaps that Churches of Ottawa can already cover. One of the things that we do, and one of the things that I've heard regularly today, is the idea of collective impact and the importance of different organizations in the city coming together to fill in some of these gaps. This is what Respond Ottawa is all about. One of the advantages to Respond Ottawa is that, as you can imagine, whether it's suburban, rural, or in the city, there are churches sprinkled out throughout the city. One of the things that ourselves and Beth Gooding's organization have connected with is the fact that there are gaps in the city where residents are not able to access community services. So whether it's a lack of community buildings, city buildings, and things like that, this is where Respond Ottawa can make an effort because there are churches in those areas. And so our mission for Respond Ottawa is to prepare, connect, and deploy the Church of Ottawa to ensure that urgent and critical needs are met during the time of crisis in this region. So the first part of our mission is to prepare. And as anyone involved in disaster relief, we want to make sure that we are equipping our churches well so that in a time of crisis, they are ready to respond right away. Connect. This is the section where we are a network of churches. So this is not an organization that is just focused on one church. While I work at the Metropolitan Bible Church, our leadership committee in the Respond Ottawa is made up of churches throughout the city. And we also want to connect with the relationships that we have in our neighborhoods. Churches are known for reaching out to their neighbors and loving their neighbors well. And this is what we do in a time of crisis and non-crisis. Deploy. So in a time of crisis, one of the things that we do is we wait to be invited in by the city. And so once again, we are gap fillers. And so having a sharing of information and a connection with Beth Gooding's organization has helped us to be able to fill in whatever necessary gaps are there. Most faith communities are filled with members who have a heart to reach out and serve their communities and are already doing so with or without a crisis. Many have structured programs already in place where physical, financial, emotional, and spiritual needs are addressed. Therefore, they are already trusted members of their neighborhoods, building relationships and caring well for their neighbors, making them ideal community partners. Ultimately, the purpose of being better prepared to respond in a time of crisis is to increase the possibility of resilience amongst all Ottawa citizens affected by crisis. Therefore, effective collaboration of various community leaders, including the faith community, is vital to this ultimate goal. Resilience is a common word that we've heard throughout this morning.
1 minute.
And one of the important things that Respond Ottawa does is that churches are there before a crisis and they are there after a crisis. They are vital to the resilience of a community during a crisis and after the crisis. And so I thank you for this time, and it's been insightful, and I am just encouraged to continue to be able to work with Beth Gooding and her team. Thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate your time as well and everything that the Met has done, past, present, and future. We do have a question from my colleague, Councillor Devine.
Hello. So thank you for coming. Forgive me, I got a frog in my throat. So I know that myself and my colleague, Councillor Hill, have been very enthused by the work of Respond Ottawa and that amalgamation of churches looking to work in partnership with the city to respond to emergency needs. I'm very proud that the Metropolitan Bible Church in my ward is absolutely a community hub and not just a hub for emergency operations. But as you're here at a budget meeting, I was enjoying your presentation, but waited to see whether or not there was a specific ask or action you were looking to see. But so I may as well ask then, because Respond Ottawa will continue to be involved in this. Is there anything particular in the current budget that's identified that you want to highlight as a fantastic avenue for you to continue doing your work? Or are there any gaps that you've identified that could be better served by adjustments to the budget?
Yes. So one of the things that Beth Gooding mentioned in her presentation is just the idea of allowing or helping community organizations be better prepared. As I mentioned, that's always a good thing to do in crisis, is to be proactive rather than reactive. And so one of the areas in the budget that would be very, very beneficial to us would be working with that and helping churches be more prepared. Even just listening to the St. John Ambulance presentation there and having to partner with them to have churches be prepared, but just in so many other ways, whether it's generators, as we mentioned with the Metropolitan Bible Church during the derecho event, we had no power. And so we were able to partner with Samaritan's Purse and have them come in and do stuff. We did have water, so we were able to provide services to the neighborhood through water. But being able to, you can imagine a building the size of the Metropolitan Bible Church, the amount of generator that would be needed is quite difficult. We are a nonprofit dependent on donations. And so being able to partner with the city to be able to be better prepared for the next crisis through things like that would be very beneficial.
Thank you. And I absolutely recognize that with churches like the Met or Woodvale Pentecostal of another part of my ward, these are such large, dynamic, nimble facilities that can easily serve as bases of operations. And having that nimble response of generators, if you were to have them, would be a thing. I know that it's not the easiest thing to just fund a generator for every church. I think I've heard conversations over the past year or so about the possible strategic development of a system of mobile generators. I can't remember if there was a tactile conversation about that, but I'll either raise the question with staff or just carry on the conversation over the year. But thank you very much. Love what you do.
Thank you, Councillor. Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to tell a quick story, and then that'll end with, I think, a question that's aligned with what Councillor Devine was talking about. But certainly my first, functional exposure to Respond Ottawa was during the tornadoes we had 2 years ago. They ripped through Laurier West. They did substantial damage, about 126 houses substantially damaged, 26 of them were condemned. And during that time, one of the first phone calls that I got was from one of the volunteer board members of Respond Ottawa to say, basically, we realize that a crisis has happened. What can we do? And my response then was, well, I don't know, because I don't even know what the heck's going on yet. I wasn't even in Barrhaven at the time. I was over in Orleans at an Ottawa Veterans Task Force meeting, actually. And so as the information became more clear, as the weight of our emergency team in the city descended upon Barrhaven, really, pushing forward the first response, it became clear that there were some places where there were some residual support elements that could be used. The first touch door to door, talking to people, were firefighters, were paramedics, were police in some cases. But a day or two after that, there was a gap where we didn't know exactly who was still around. Some people were away on holidays. We wanted to follow up because there was substantial property damage. And certainly that was a place where between Respond Ottawa, between my office, between Beth's office, we were able to find those gaps. But at that time, there were some questions about insurance, about liability, about that relationship that I think still are probably not completely sorted out, but that's probably a place where going forward, as we mature, that relationship, it's a place where probably that fits into the budget. So, thank you very much for coming out today, Sandra. Are there any other specific things that you would be concerned about from a budget perspective, or that you would envision that could support you from a budget perspective that we can follow up with staff afterwards? Or is it more broad in what you originally spoke to?
I think just what you mentioned, we're very much a grassroots organization that is pretty new. We're based on volunteers. And so a lot of these areas, of equipping and things like that, we bring in other partners. And so we would love to further that conversation about how we can do better with the liability and all of those things.
Thank you very much, Sandra. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that. There are no other questions. Thank you for your presentation, your good work. We appreciate it. And our final delegate today is Kate Vienno with Just Food. Welcome. Good to see you again. And there's a button there on the microphone. If you just press that, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Vienno, and I'm here on behalf of Just Food, which is a member of the Emergency Food Security Task Force with the City of Ottawa. We appreciate the work that this committee and city staff are doing to strengthen Ottawa's emergency preparedness in a time of growing climate instability, increased extreme weather events, growing socioeconomic unrest, and rising household food insecurity. Today, I want to speak to a single urgent point that the draft budget must include dedicated funding to support the food security sector's role in the city's food security emergency response plan. The city's emergency food security response plan, still in the process of being vetted, relies on a network of community organizations such as food banks, community kitchens, neighborhood serving groups, and distribution hubs to activate during a crisis. These are the organizations expected to keep residents fed when basic systems are disrupted. But right now, the expectation that nonprofits and charities can simply step in during the emergency without committed resources to do so is not realistic, not responsible, and not in line with how the city funds other essential emergency functions. These organizations are already operating far beyond their capacity to deal as social services providing to those dealing with hunger on a daily basis in our city. We are all managing unprecedented demand due to inflation, high housing costs, and funding levels that are just keeping our heads above water. We're all relying on overburdened staff and volunteer networks who are already doing everything we can just to maintain daily operations. To ask our organizations to take on additional emergency responsibilities without any designated funding for staff time, coordination, utilities, food purchasing, equipment, or transportation is to set up the system for failure at the very moment residents need it the most. Let me be clear that nonprofit organizations want to help during emergencies. We're committed to the well-being of our communities, but we cannot be expected to absorb unfunded emergency obligations on top of existing workload. When we talk about emergency preparedness, we talk about reliability. We talk about predictable systems that activate when needed. In an emergency, we fund fire services, we fund paramedics, we fund public works, we fund police, because we understand that emergency response cannot depend on goodwill alone. Food access during one-time crises is no different. It is a core component of public safety and emergency preparedness, and it must be funded as such. As the city intends for community organizations dealing with information, housing connections, seniors, and food provisioning to be partners in emergency food response, then the city must budget accordingly so that these organizations know when we commit to being part of the plan, we do so with the confidence that it is funded, coordinated, and taken seriously. The draft budget presents an opportunity to correct this. We're asking this committee to include a dedicated budget line for emergency food security response, to fund staffing, infrastructure, coordination, and food procurement costs required for organizations to activate safely and effectively in an emergency, and to work with community partners in 2026 to finalize a transparent funding model so that commitments are clear well before the next emergency occurs. Ottawa's emergency food response system will only be as strong as the resources we put into it. Right now, the system is running on hope, volunteerism, and exhausted staff. That's not a plan, and it's not fair to the organizations the emergency plan depends on. We urge you to ensure that the 2026 budget recognizes emergency food response as the essential city function that it is, and to fund it at the level required to keep our residents safe, fed, and supported in the moments that matter most. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to building a more resilient Ottawa.
Thank you very much for your presentation this morning. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Devine and then Councillor King. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kate, for the presentation. Just so I can understand, so you're identifying a gap in our emergency response systems, and just there you were advocating that there be additional line items for staffing, operations, and food procurement to be deployed during emergencies. And just so I understand, are you talking about the kind of emergency, i.e., let's say natural disaster, and that food services be, food resources be allocated during that? Or are you talking about emergency as in a general food insecurity situation?
Correct. I'm talking about one-time crises. So the task force, so not the overall food insecurity crisis, but we're talking about in those moments where we have a derecho come in, the food security task force was established to be able to initiate there's a response needed and what are the next steps. And part of that response has been developed to engage community organizations. But that depends on those community organizations having available staff, volunteerism. This is where there is a gap, and in expecting that response is possible where these are the organizations that are already extended.
And thank you for clarifying that for me. And now that I do understand that, are you saying that in the absence of the city allocating their own resources, managing that need, that is there kind of like a official or unofficial mandated expectation that community organizations such as yours fill those needs and allocate their own resources during those emergencies?
I will say that through these conversations, some of the organizations have identified that they would have to say no, that they wouldn't be able to meet the need of that response.
Oh, I can totally understand that they would have to say no because you don't budget for, a 2% contingency for floods. But I guess my specific question is, as you and other organizations are funded by the city, whether it's direct or indirect, do organizations such as yours feel that there is an expectation from the city that you step in and allocate your resources during those emergencies?
In this particular plan, yes.
What do you mean by in this particular
In
plan?
the response plan, the emergency food security response plan, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring those questions to staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd really like to thank the delegation for bringing this issue forward. I know that many people around this table did, along with community members, experience that powerful derecho storm on May 21st, 2022. And it hit many places hard, creating extensive damage to infrastructure. We saw downed trees, widespread power outages across many neighborhoods throughout the city, including in Overbrook, in Rita Rockcliffe ward, in my ward, where we learned that there wasn't a coordinated response. The elected officials on the ground had to work with staff and community members to build networks to get food to people who would have real challenges accessing food on a regular basis. So I just wanted to ask you to elaborate what does this look like in lower income priority neighborhoods? Because that had been one of my concerns that I did raise with staff over the past number of years after that storm, that we do need a plan, especially since provincial legislation has this expectation that, emergencies will be dealt with residents. But what if those residents don't have the capacity to be prepared for emergencies? So I'm just wondering if you could speak to the challenges that are seen by low-income neighborhoods and recommendations that you might want to make so that we can address those types of challenges.
I think it's connected to the community organizations that are doing the work in low-income neighborhoods are typically the ones that are most stretched. They are most at capacity, beyond capacity, and again, have the willingness to step in these instances, but without the safety net, without the understanding that they'd be able to do so by bringing in additional staff, by having funds for overtime hours. By the problem is that volunteerism is already in many places maxed out. And so it is a need to rely on that paid support. But if these community organizations in these neighborhoods are not able to provide that or to offer that, it becomes much more challenging to properly support and respond to these one-off instances. So really, I do think that it just comes down to ensuring that there is a strong framework, a strong understanding that there will be financial support to respond from these community organizations who know the neighborhoods, who know the needs of the residents, who already have the connections within those communities to be able to act. It is really critical. And the emergency response plan, all of these organizations would be in a position to enact and to respond accordingly if there was that understanding and that comfort of knowing they would be able to fund it and get that help that they do need to react.
I appreciate that insight, and I agree with the notion that the municipality should be able to, at a minimum, provide some level of support, especially around food security during times of emergency, especially to high priority, low income neighborhoods, as they do not have the resources. And we know that just with that storm in 2022, we're dealing with families and with residents who lost the contents of their fridge. And you realize, based on the income supports that they were on, that they would not be able to replace that food literally without supports. And if we have municipal supports ready to go, standard operating procedures and funding to address these issues, I think it will make for better emergency management in those neighborhoods, rather than having to flail around, bring together elected officials, bring everybody around to a table to work on those issues in the midst of emergencies, which I experienced. So I really thank you for really illuminating this real issue. And I just wanted to thank you for the work that your organizations undertake within the community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King, and thank you for your delegation today. Appreciate your time as well. Okay, colleagues, that concludes the delegate portion, of our meeting today. We will now transition to questions for staff about the budget. And I just want to underscore, please focus on the budget. I know there's the subject matter can take us down many roads, but we're here today to focus on the 2026 budget. So if your questions can be aligned with that purpose, that would be appreciated. Vice Chair Hill, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We'll go a little bit all over the map. I took a bunch of notes here. So my first question is for Chief Hutt. We heard some comments from the fire union with regards to adequate ventilation for equipment at the fire halls, washer dryer systems, infrastructure and such. Could you speak to this budget and how it addresses those issues, or if there's any gaps that we need to have a conversation about?
Chair, thank you for that question. Excuse me. I just want to start by saying first and foremost, the health and safety of our members is obviously our number one priority. Health and safety isn't just a one-time budget. It's an ongoing evolution of things that we see improvements on an ongoing basis. We have a very active health and safety group that comprises of the Ottawa Fire Service leadership team, as well as the OPFFA members. So we have constant dialogue. When it comes to some of the items that were addressed today, I am pleased to say Ottawa Fire Service is really leaders in many of those facets. We talked about cancer screening, for example. This round of bargaining, we're probably one of the municipalities that endorsed and supported cancer screening through our bargaining. The items that were discussed, I am also pleased to share with you that in 2024, we received 370 K as part of a grant program with the province of Ontario through the Ontario Fire Marshal, and it was specific for cancer prevention, cancer screening. And a lot of the initiatives that we're moving forward with takes into consideration improvement to bunker gear rooms, ventilation, particulate hoods for cancer prevention. And I'm also pleased that we submitted an application for 2025 with the province, which has doubled that cancer prevention grant funding. So if we're successful, we'll probably see in and around 600 to 700,000 that the initiatives that the association raised, that's where that funding will be allotted for.
Okay, thank you. And could you speak as well, Chief Hutt, to the study regarding future growth over the next 5-ish years?
Chair, thank you. As part of our station location study, we did have a report before committee just last year. I'd identified 2 areas, but I do want to just recognize the efforts, and it was mentioned today and also mentioned by finance, just the investments that we've had in Canada North with the increase of full-time staffing in that new station, and recently with Stittsville with upstaffing from a volunteer model to a composite model. So we're certainly very appreciative of committee and council's commitment there. But in the next 10 years, what we're forecast is the station in Manotick in 2027. And we recognize this is going to be part of the budget deliberations in those years. But the station location study identified 2027 some capital investments to renovate Station 94 and preparing that to convert that from a volunteer station into a composite or a full-time station as well, with some operating costs in 2028 for staffing. And then moving further forward for Station 93 in Greeley in 2023, capital costing for renovations of that station with in 2032 with staffing investments for that. So that's just a high level highlight of some of our future commitments for growth. And again, just understanding that will all be part of discussions through those budget processes.
Okay, thank you. And for Chief Poirier, can you speak to the progress being made on your new paramedic headquarters structure?
Through the chair, thank you. Several years back, the Ottawa Paramedic Service recognized a need for a secondary deployment facility. Our model has been on a single start. It was built in 2005. With probably a 20-year lifespan. We're now 20 years into that facility. And for the last several years, we've been looking at a new facility. We've done our homework in terms of preliminary design, land location, where we've found a piece of land in Barrhaven off of Strandherd. And part of our due diligence was to look at how could the city financially afford to do this. We expect to early next year bring forward a report to Financial Corporate Services Committee with respect to a proposed financing model for a new facility to continue the good service that we provide to our community.
Okay, thank you. General Manager, my final, comments would be, does this budget give you the resources that you need in order for your department to be successful in its mandate?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I was expecting that question. It's one that we get every year, typically from Chair Brockington, who has just left the room. But absolutely, yes, it does. Based on our current service standards, which I highlighted in my presentation, that we are meeting or exceeding for the most part across the board. That being said, we also have annual reports that are a requirement as part of our terms of reference for this committee. So if we do see increases beyond what we're anticipating or what we're projecting out, we would absolutely come back to this committee and highlight what those new trends might be indicating. But for now, based on the growth that we're seeing across the city and a lot of those efficiency measures that we put in place within the operations, as well as the investments that we've been making so far this term of council and the proposed investments in budget 2026, I believe that really sets us on the right path forward.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hill. Councillor Skolsky. Great, thank you. I have a few questions. So maybe just to start with Chief Poirier on the paramedic services. So I often hear from rural residents, and you touched a little bit upon the response times in rural communities. And during the Rural Summit, we had heard the 23 paramedics were part of improving general services to rural communities. I'm wondering if you can sort of drill down a little bit in terms of how precisely this budget will contribute to better response times or better services for rural residents.
Chair, a strategic priority for the city has been to improve response times. And the investment that over the last 3 years that City Council has supported our service, specifically to improve response time, which was inclusive of both urban and rural areas. Councillor Kelly brought forward concerns last year with respect to the disparity between the response times in the urban areas versus the rural areas. Early in 2025, the Ottawa Paramedic Service dedicated 3 resources to the rural areas, Kinburn, Richmond, and Metcalfe, with the specific intent to improve those response times. We're collecting data right now in terms of the effect of that. Preliminary results demonstrate that there has been an improvement, but we also believe that we can still do better. And the investment in 2026, a portion of that investment will also be allocated to improve the response times to the city as a whole, with note to the rural residents as well.
Can you just clarify when we can expect to see that data and have a better understanding of the impacts of these changes?
Chair, our annual report lists out all the data elements, and we absolutely will be reporting on that with our level zeros, our response volumes, and those a full kind of suite of data elements.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. I have a question as I read through the whole budget, so I'm not really sure exactly where it goes, but it's about fleet and the greening of fleet. So I think it was highlighted in the paramedics component, but it may apply to the other areas as well. And just to clarify and ask if the investments that are being made to green the fleet, if there's any consideration or need for infrastructure in the rural communities so that there's no risk that the fleet itself would not properly support in a rural geographic area.
Through the chair, yeah. So I'll take that one because fleet is within my department. So part of the green fleet strategy is green first is our approach, but obviously with no operational impact. So if the green technology is not where it needs to be to meet the operations, then we move on to the fuel technology, if you will. But right now we're deploying chargers across the city at different facilities. So we're putting it where the green fleet resides. So most of our green fleet right now tends to be more in the urban area. And there's 2 reasons for that. There's some infrastructure there, but the other reason is once we get into the rural area, obviously those commuting distances are much more longer. Some of our technology in these vehicles, if I look at the Ford Lightning as an example, I think we're getting about 350 kilometers or so. So we're kind of keeping them more in the urban area, closer to the yard. So it meets the operational requirement, but still get the infrastructure. But where it makes sense, it will be deployed where it can be with the infrastructure to support it. I know in Rogers' area, he tends to have more electric units than the others at the table, mainly because his bylaw officers can use those that's on the marketplace. So, the answer to your question, quite frankly, is, where we can use electric in the rural area, we'll definitely have them there with this support for them.
Great. Thank you for that. That's helpful. And certainly I imagine that as things evolve over time, I think the concern is just that the fleet will evolve faster than the infrastructure perhaps necessary to support it, and that somehow the rural community might be less served in the future because of that. So just to maybe put a marker on that, that's certainly top of mind for folks as we go to green our fleet. A question for bylaw. Thank you, Roger. For everything that your team does for every day in the rural community. And one of the things that's come to mind, or that I see the most, is that we have really complex files and sort of situations that require a lot of investigation, and then also interaction with the provinces, trying to sort out exactly what's happening on some of these rural sites. And so my question to you was whether you feel that this budget is truly giving your team what it needs to service these types of complex cases in rural communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Again, as Ryan said, this question comes up often, almost every year. This is we have seen a substantial increase in service demand this year, probably about a 14%. So, at the end of this year, we will analyze our data in preparation for our annual report to see what the impacts are of that service demand on our response standards. So we haven't completed that work yet. So we will report back on that in April when we present our annual report. But I will say that, council has invested significantly in this term of council. So actually 20 FTEs in bylaw and regulatory services over the last 3 years. So we do appreciate that, and that's certainly helped to address the demand on our service over the last 10 years, really. We're also working on some mitigation strategies that, we're looking at new ways of doing enforcement. The ever-changing legislation at the provincial level and the federal level often impacts, the municipal enforcement and some of the legislation that we have to enforce, and that certainly impacts on some of the delays and more complex investigations when we have to consult with the province and get some answers before we can continue with our enforcement practices. But we're leveraging technology. We have our alternate response program, so we've expanded that, as much as we can to, which, means that we don't have to send an officer to the door on a first-time offense. We're sending a letter to more of an education to explain to the resident that we did receive a complaint, and this is what the complaint is, and this is how you can address that complaint. And so far, we have about an 80% success rate on that, meaning that we don't get a second call for that address. So that's helped us in addressing this increase in service demand. Our SOPs, again, and a more robust training program for our officers as well to ensure that we have consistent enforcement, not just from officer to officer, but from ward to ward, so across the city. Again, better result in our enforcement. So, and also leveraging more administrative support. So, more time for our officers to be on the road, less time that they're having to do the administrative side of some of the work that they have to do. So, we are trying to address the increase by some of these mitigation strategies. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. One last question, and it's for Chief Hutt. So, I had learned that the fire station in Vars, which is just, from my understanding, is about like 600 meters away from water infrastructure, that the regular city water infrastructure, and that the costs of essentially the cost of the water management in that particular station, long term, it would be a better investment for the city to make sure that they're tapped up to city water. It's a challenging one because I understand that it's a cost impact for operations. It's a facilities question. It's an infrastructure question. But I just want to maybe ask you if you can clarify whether you're seeing the infrastructure investment here to ultimately help save costs on fire services, or if there's some item you'd like to draw our attention to.
Chair, thank you. Thank you for that question. And I want to make sure I stay in my lane and I don't get in trouble. But what I can offer is a little bit of background for the virus situation. So in 2007, when they built that new station, it was just outside of the village boundary. Nice station. It was intended to be on a well. There was numerous well attempts to drill on the location, each time coming up with methane gas in the well, so it was contaminated. So as a short-term solution, they talked about, or what we did do, is installed a reservoir to run the station off of a reservoir. That does get filled, either weekly or every 2 weeks to operate that station for regular use. So since then, we've had recent conversations with facility management, with infrastructure management, just about seeing about tying into the municipal water system that would make that station functional. And I think when you start to look after 18 years of water delivery to that station, connecting a service where is probably a very viable option. And I do share that it has been 18 years and probably something we need to move forward with and support the discussions with facility and infrastructure management and seeing that done. So.
Thank you. I appreciate you explaining that situation. So this is a great opportunity to sort of look at how across the silos of our system, there's opportunities for cost savings, long-term cost savings with some more strategic investments. Thank you.
And I now know something about the VAR station I didn't know before, so thank you. Very well. Councillor Dorosh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First question is to the treasurer. We won't know the numbers for 2025 for this branch until, I guess, after into 2026. How's this branch doing in terms of the 2025 budget? You know, it's a good indicator as to whether they were resourced appropriately in the year before. I think it's a consideration.
Yeah, Chair. So we provided the update in September for forecasts. I don't have it at the top of my head by department, but what I can say overall, the department is doing pretty good, but there's ins and outs. Roger's doing really good. He's got some extra revenue coming from his parking enforcement that's kind of helping. Chief Hutt tends to be not doing so good. And that's not something that's, you know, out of norm. It's really goes back to mainly from a fleet perspective. A lot of the equipment has been a little bit aging, so that our maintenance costs on the fire equipment is kind of catching up to us, if you will. And that's been, you know, there's been multiple issues there behind that: supply chain, pandemic, aging, cost of the units. What I can say in this budget, our fleet replacement plan for 2026 is 36 million change. And I think there's about 13, Paul, coming to you. I think we have about eight units. I think there's a number of pumper trucks. Pumper trucks right now, I think, are going for about 1.6 million per unit. So we are, I know Lila on my team is working closely with Paul and his team to really get ahead of that. So we're making some significant investments there to address that. So that's probably one of the area from a budget perspective that really stands out is there, but there's a plan in place to get back there. In 2025 as well, again, in Paul's shop with the collective agreements, there's a little bit of a catch up because they settled for 24, 25, 26 forward. So there's a little bit of retroactivity that we're seeing in year that we're fully funding in 2026 as well. If you go to the details, you'll see a line item there. I think it's about 6.2 million or so from a retroactive base adjustment to get back to that agreement. So overall, I think, you know, the issues that we're seeing, we're addressing.
Okay. Because you do get these claims, oh, we're not doing enough, we should increase it more. And I think last year overall as a budget we surplused, right? And so for me, it's important to look at the year before to make sure that people had the resources. There's going to be some areas where there's challenges, as you mentioned, and there's going to be others where it's a much more positive. So I appreciate the perspective on the year before, and we'll look forward to that report. Switching to Mr. Chapman, I was very interested in your comments on and the initiative to beef up and enhance the resources around schools. It's an area where I do get a significant number of complaints, both from the leadership of the schools, the parent council, the people who live around the schools. So could you just expand on the game plan for that, please?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for that question. So the 5 FTEs that are being made permanent through this budget were temporarily created in 2025 because we saw an increase in demand for not just the school zones, but also overtime parking in the suburbs. So we did do a bit of a realignment of our parking beats so we could increase our presence in the suburbs, both for the increased demand in the service request for overtime parking, but also to be able to respond to the increasing demand for our enforcement in the school zones.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think, well, I know it's important. And again, I do get a lot of complaints, and I'm not a person that is going to criticize the parents for not walking or to criticize the children for not walking or biking. The catchment areas for the school busing is ridiculous, right? That's contributing to this, that if you do not bus the kids, then you are going to have these traffic problems around our schools. Secondly, if you don't get a handle on managing the population growth of the schools in terms of portables, we get into these problems. So I had a school with 22 portables. It was a traffic Chernobyl in that area, and there was very little we could do. So for me, I'm glad to see this investment is being made, but really the upstream of this is school busing, and the province and the school boards need to take it seriously if we're going to have a kind of a reasonable circulation of traffic in front of the schools. I think we need to go back to the days where there was a much smaller catchment for busing. So I do want to flag that for the public that we're going to do what we can here, but I think the people aren't the problem. I think it's the lack of busing. Had a question on the budget on page 10. I think it's the fire service user fees, marijuana grow up inspections, investigation and compliance. Does anyone know what that is? I guess I would interpret a grow up as like an illegal operation, which we wouldn't inspect, but maybe I've lost track of kind of where we're at on the cannabis file and what this is.
Chair, through you, that's a very good question. So there is a reporting requirement through the province that we report those situations. So it's a probably in the budget because of a reporting requirement through the province of Ontario through but the question is investigations. Okay.
Maybe it's just the wording. Like I think a grow up, it's like an illegal grow up, like which you're not inspecting. You're shutting that down, I assume. But if there are legitimate licensed production facilities, then perhaps you have some role. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I apologize. I know exactly what that is. Okay. So the introduction of marijuana for health purposes, okay. When an application comes in, we have to go in and do certain inspections pursuant to the code compliance. So we were able to charge back the proponents that are proposing those applications for those inspections and those visits. So
okay. So just so I'm clear, so they're licensed people or they're legal
absolutely
operations and not grow ups in the kind of the street nomenclature. Okay, thank you for that. It was an interesting line item there. Yeah. Thanks, Chief. That's good. Okay, quote of the day. That's all from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to staff for your presentation and for all the work you do to support and serve our residents every day, both in times of crisis and not. I just have a couple questions for Ms. Gooding with respect to, there was a slide on city security services. There was a $320,000 increase. I think that's how that read. I'm just wondering if you could tell me how much of that is attributable to the new security services at City Hall, specifically the metal detectors.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I will have to get back to you because it's partly attributed to some additional security guards and partly attributed to inflationary cost increases related to our contract. So I apologize for not having it in front of me, but I'll get back offline. Thanks.
No, that's totally fine. Just sort of in follow-up to that, I was wondering specifically, we do host quite a few events at City Hall after hours. And I was wondering with those new security measures, obviously that requires additional personnel to be present during those after hours events. And I was just wondering if you have this information today, great. If not, maybe before council, how that is being handled. Is that if there's a cost associated with having an evening event, is that to the user of Jean Pickett Hall, for example, or does that go through your budget?
Thanks again for the question, Mr. Chair. So it's a combination. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the event, we'll pay for it through the corporate security budget. Sometimes facilities will pay depending on the nature of the event. And in some cases, we're able to offset costs by having staff support, not with security screening, but with wayfinding and things like that.
Yeah, because I was looking at the community and social services budget and the rental rates for things like Jean Pickett Hall, and there wasn't a substantial increase. So I didn't know how, it didn't seem that there was costs associated with security within those rental fees specifically. So I didn't know if they were negotiated individually. I'll follow up through that budget, but if you have any additional information before council on that, I would appreciate it. My next question is for Cyril, just the staff gapping. I noticed that public health had also done the same thing to shore up some of their, structural deficits that they're having. And so you're going from 3 to 3.5. Is that a strategy you're using across budgets at the city, or is it specific to this department?
Through the chair, so it's a strategy that we're applying across the city. So just to be cleared, the corporate guideline is 3%. Not everyone's at 3%, so we kind of teeter it based on the needs. Frontline services tend to be a bit low, so everyone's not given a flat line 3, but we did give a flat line 0.5% across the board. Yes, increase.
And I guess specific to this budget, what does that translate to in terms of a dollar amount?
I think it was 880K or so, roughly, approximately. It was in my presentation there. I think it was.
And historically, like I know it's different between different departments and different levels, but historically, what target do we end up achieving annually?
Overall, across the corporation, we tend to be above. And what we've seen specifically since 2020 and even up to now, it's been a very, very cyclical pattern from a labor market perspective. Obviously, going into the pandemic, a lot of things changed there. What we've noticed this year is coming into the year, we were actually doing pretty good in terms of attraction. Now with the federal announcements and some of the distress that's there, we've actually seen people holding back on leaving because there could be opportunities for packages at the federal level. So this year we've seen a little bit of a lag in terms of our hiring capability. So things are being it's taken us longer to hire, and our vacancies are a little bit higher than in the past couple of years. So that's why there's minimal risk in kind of applying this strategy across the board.
So just so I understand in practice, though, like obviously there's people that leave and it takes time to fill positions. And so there's natural vacancy through that. But is the strategy here, like, will departments be intentionally holding positions vacant in order to achieve that 3.5% target? I know some are going to be frontline and we can't, but overall, is that sort of the strategy that general managers are being asked through this?
Yes. I mean, the reality is no operational impact. So where you can basically relook at the position when it comes vacant, take that first look first to see, is there a way you can spread the capacity? Is there a way you can kind of change things up or leverage technology, whatever the case may be? But by no means will there be any impact frontline services. We've been in a hiring pause for the past 3 years globally across the organization. So really now it's about just kind of flowing that normalization through the budget, if you will, given the market that we're seeing and the conditions that we're seeing in terms of the lag to hire, but no impact to frontline services.
Yeah, and I know that that's what's often said, but I think because one of the examples you gave of a position that might be left vacant is an administrative assistant, which maybe doesn't interact specifically with the public, but I think in a community, in a parks and recreation circumstance with park planning, when there was kind of a lack of an AA, it was very difficult to get a park planner's attention to get, move on a CIL file. So while they might not have a direct impact on frontline services, it does impact our ability to, get things done when managers don't have the right support. So I'm always just a little bit cautious about this as a corporate strategy about leaving positions intentionally vacant, which perhaps could have the unintended consequence of affecting services in the community, even though they're not frontline positions. So
Chair, just to be clear, like the intention is only there if there's no service impact. So if there's a service impact, that's the GM's discretion, no matter what the position is. But if there's an ability there to hold it, yes. And the other reality is, even if we do post, we are seeing, 6 week is probably, optimistic these days to get a position posted. Typically, we post for 2 to 3 weeks. You get a week of screening, you get a week of interviews, job offer, 2 weeks notice. You're almost at 8 weeks there. That's if everything goes smooth. So what we're seeing is, a little bit of a longer time because people in the market are holding back, making a decision. They're going back to their current employer, et cetera, et cetera. So by no means is it just the direction to all the departments is not to intentionally hold where service will be impacted. Is staff where service continues.
Great. Thank you. That's all the questions from me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. And sorry, just opening my screen again. Councillor Devine and then Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, EPPS staff. Echoing my colleagues' comments about the fine work that you do protecting the city. So I do have a few questions. I think mainly in public safety services. So the first question, in response to what we heard from the delegate from Respond Ottawa, and I think a lot of my questions here are going to be about the city being able to continue engaging with and partnering with, in a supportive manner, the nonprofit sector so as not to create additional bureaucracy on our part, but making sure that we can do so in a sustainable way. So Respond Ottawa was talking about the gaps that they've identified in a program that they are very, very supportive of. One gap being the ability to provide electrical power during a crisis. And having been down this road before, I know it can be a very cost prohibitive item to take care of. Does the budget or any pilot projects that you are looking to explore, are there any avenues that you have in the immediate horizon that can perhaps help fill that gap where organizations such as Respond Ottawa or otherwise can acquire equipment to help meet those power needs?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And it allows me to do a bit of a plug for our colleagues' budget in Strategic Initiatives Department. Under Climate Ready Ottawa, we have been working closely with them because what we're seeing is that the city is experiencing more severe weather events that can sometimes impact the entire geography of our city. I don't know if Councillor King is still online, but he pointed to another important trend, which is that the cost of living and affordability crisis means that there are Ottawa residents who struggle to get by every day. And so during an emergency, it's even more of a burden to them, and we want to reach and help these people. The third trend that we're seeing is that there is a lot of interest and goodwill across the community for neighbors to help neighbors and for community-based groups to support at the local level. But we've been working with our colleagues in Strategic Initiatives Department because, to your point, those groups that have the capability to organize and to support at the local level don't normally have the resources to do the preparedness that they may want. And so what we're looking at doing under funding provided through Climate Resiliency Ottawa is to do a pilot community grant program that would enable local entities to apply for funding from the city for emergency preparedness. So things like equipment, including small generators, training, exercise, things like that. It's very similar to the province's program, but what we find with the province's program is that it's geared towards entities that have an emergency management mandate. But in Ottawa, the bulk of the social services providers who step up during an emergency are doing so outside of that mandate. A perfect example is the delegate we had from one of our food providers. Her mandate is food security, not emergency management. But during an emergency, she steps up and provides support. And so we want to work with those groups and make sure that they have the resources and equipment they need to work with us during an emergency response.
To carry on that, and so this may be a question either for Ryan or for Beth, but specifically coming back to the question of generators, because it's great when we can provide training to organizations or small amounts of materials. So you made reference to the Ontario, the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant Program, which can provide funds for the acquisition of generators, but only for municipalities of 100,000 and less. Knowing that a power outage during a natural disaster can put any area into a loss of power for 5 to 7 days, sometimes worse. Does the city have, and knowing that the acquisition of such a generator is cost prohibitive to most organizations, does the city have any avenues that it could pursue funding opportunities at the provincial, federal level where the city could acquire a small number of these mobile generators that could be deployed in a crisis, no matter where, in a nimble fashion?
Thank you for the question through you, Chair. We've really been prioritizing generators to prepare us for some of these extreme weather events. And I believe Chief Hutt could even speak to some of the work that's been done on some of our very critical infrastructure, like our fire stations. But beyond that, to your point, absolutely, Beth referenced the Climate Ready Ottawa plan that we're working closely with our partners in strategic initiatives and facility services. You had made a comment earlier about these mobile generators, right? And that's the type of technology that we're looking into now. So happy to take that away as part of those internal discussions, bringing down some of those silos as well in terms of how we can leverage some of these new tools that we're looking to have here at the city that can also help support our community response as well.
Great. And if acquisition is out of the question, I would always encourage the city to speak to the local film and TV industry because they typically have a fleet of mobile generators to power any production shoot. And if you could sign any kind of agreements with that industry that they would lend them during a crisis, there's your answer right there. Beth, one thing I don't envy about your position is the ever-shifting nature of emergencies. And recently, we had droughts where we had low water areas across the city. Has the city done anything to invest? Because I know we had a conversation about the limits to what the city can do in response to that. But I do know that other jurisdictions who have perhaps a longer history of drought, BC has acquired emergency water distribution units where they can, roll in a crisis and for a time-limited fashion provide 10,000 units of 5-liter bags of water, and those mobile units cost like less than 200 grand a pop. If we can anticipate that this year's drought experience may continue, has emergency response solutions for that landed on your horizon of work plan?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It's an ongoing discussion across multiple levels of government and with many partners. The situation in Ottawa is such that the drought is affecting a small subset of about 7% of the population, which is the percentage that are on drilled or dug wells. And like I said, we don't know the exact percentage, but it's less than 7% who have dry wells. And it's a private property issue. So that has always been the city's red line, is that the way the emergency management program works is that the city is there to support with emergency and social services within our mandate and for those residents most in need. But we don't have the jurisdiction to support what is a private property issue. What we're doing is that we are working with a range of partners to make reasonable supports to those residents in need, including the capacity to fill water containers, take showers at city facilities. We've put out information pamphlets. We're working with all of the impacted councillors, several of whom, well, all of whom actually have done amazing advocacy with us. But it's not an issue for which we have a full mandate and for which we have a lot of history as well.
Thank you. The last line of questioning I want to bring is in regards to the delegate we had from Just Food, who was talking about the city's emergency food security response plan. So I was happy to get clarity from the delegate that the emergency that she was speaking about was not the general state of food insecurity, but about the need for an emergency food response during, let's say, a natural disaster. And from what I understand, the city is currently trying to develop this emergency food security response plan involving a task force of many groups in the city that are looking to advise on the plan. But from what I gather, the various organizations are hesitant to sign on to the plan and therefore operationalize the plan because the current expectation of the plan is that they would be allocating their resources when they're already strapped to meet just their basic mandate. If that is the case, if there's no specific budget line item allocated to that, I understand from you that your department may be looking to Community and Social Services Department to explore some options. But I guess I wouldn't mind either asking yourself, or I'm not sure if I can ask my colleague, Councillor Dudas, in her capacity as chair here, but perhaps more a question to you, Cyril. If what we want to do is to benefit from the nonprofit sector, that they can respond in a crisis, rather than us having to create an entire separate emergency food response division from the city. And if we can't anticipate when these crises happen, the last thing we want to do is to starve our nonprofit sector any more than they already are. Are there options where the city could allocate a reserve fund that is specifically for an emergency food response reserve, whereby if the signatories to that plan go forth and do what we want them to do, respond in a crisis, that rather than them starving their own resources, they could invoice back from that reserve? Is that technically possible?
Chair, yes, I mean, that's technically possible if that's the will of council. I would caution that without discussion and review. We do have a significant budget within Clara's shop in terms of food security. It's really about, not stepping on each other's toes in terms of the mandate of our responsibility from emergency response and what Clara does on food security and where we cross that line and what we should be doing as a municipality versus those conditions. That's the caution I would give on that.
No, I definitely understand. Sorry, Ryan, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, if I could just add to what to Cyril's comments as well. So far to date, in terms of some of the emergencies that we've experienced, we have had a sufficient number of providers in the city that we've been able to get food from. That being said, it's there are times when their availability might not be appropriate, where they're facing other pressures as an organization. So we go to the next one on the list, and I think that's a lot of the work that Beth and her team are doing too, is looking at who are those providers, and let's really have a strong roster that we could draw from. But to date, we have been able to identify folks as a result. But if we're starting to see more events into the future and more extreme weather conditions, we might have to be drawing from those same resources too often. So that's definitely something that we're going to look at.
I can appreciate that because that sector is, generous to a fault, but their demand is growing, and so there will be a limit to how much they can contribute. I'll have a conversation with my colleagues about this offline, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanagh and then Kelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the whole emergency preparedness team. You're doing a great job, and I think that what we want to do is more prevention, and so that we don't keep you as busy. And I'm going to use the example of Britannia because we've had a number of situations where the fire department had to rush to rescue people. A lot of it is people who are new to Canada. They buy devices, etc., and go off and hit the rapids. We need more outreach on preventative, on teaching people, the dangers out there. But specifically, pardon me, we need to talk to children. And we started that this summer. And I want to say thank you to the fire and paramedics, I believe, who were coming out to the City of Ottawa day camps that were being held at Britannia because they're in the building with the Ron Colbus building. And they took them down to the water to teach them water safety, the importance of water safety. This is not swimming lessons. And it was very helpful. This is about the dangers of water. We've had a fatality of a child at Britannia. We can't do enough to work on this issue. And we have camps that are working with the kids in the community. Many of them are newcomers to Canada, or their families are. I just want to know if we're going to be able to keep this up. It was tried out this summer, and I believe it was a success. And I want to thank everyone who was involved to make it happen because it's very helpful. The other thing that is very helpful is the paramedics were working on the wellness clinics. They had them held in, for example, in Carlingwood Library. They also had them in buildings, OCH buildings, for example. And that was helpful, especially when people do not have primary care. So it was also another preventative measure. I just want to know if we can see a continuation of these wonderful projects. Thank you.
Chair, the answer is yes. Most recently, we've been working with Ottawa Community Housing to look at opportunities where we can support residents in their facilities as well. Because in discussion with community housing, there is an identified need where we can actually help with the idea and the concept that you bring forward, Councillor, regarding prevention to keep people safe at home, which as a result requires the paramedic service to transport less patients to the hospital by actually taking care of individuals in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you specifically address the new program that was started of teaching water safety to the campers at Ron Colbus Lakeside?
Chair, the paramedic service wasn't the coordinating agency. We were asked to participate, and we're absolutely thrilled to be able to be first a participant and to share that knowledge. Our paramedic marine unit has been involved in water safety for a number of years, and we collaborate with Ottawa Fire and Ottawa Police to provide that good safe instruction to our community and to, arguably to save lives and to prevent loss of life on water. So we're absolutely committed to it. Based on the reports that we've received and also your comments, we will be participating on a go-forward basis. Thank you.
That's fantastic news. I know it's been a big help, and it makes the community feel better, especially after the tragedy that occurred last year. So the more education we can get, especially to people who are unfamiliar with open water, is very, very helpful. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kelly, you're next, and then Councillor Luloff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And before I launch off, I'd like to echo my colleagues' appreciation for the Emergency and Protective Services team and the people that are here today in the leadership positions and the work that you do. For whatever reason, Ward 5, where I represent, has experienced a great number of adverse weather events and natural disasters, so to speak. And so I think I've spent more time speaking with Beth Gooding on Friday evenings over the course of this term than I have with any of my family or friends. So thank you for the work that you do and the responsiveness that you show in serving people when they need it the most. I was really intrigued to hear you, Beth, talk about the local grants. Part of the experience in my ward is one of the things that we're actually been lucky enough to have in our community as a result of some of these things is West Carleton Disaster Relief. And so they're, for people who don't know, they're a locally based volunteer organization who help respond to emergencies when they happen, helping coordinate actions and getting sandbags and different people or different things to people when they need it. And one thing that they've expressed over the last number of years is the willingness to find some funding so that, rural communities are quite large and spread out. And so community associations can be 50 kilometers apart from each other in certain areas. Maybe not exactly, but anyway. So those resources are a lot more effectively deployed when they're in the communities that they serve. And so they've been looking for funding to buy supplies that can be deployed right in the communities, oftentimes at community centers. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that that grant program that you mentioned earlier. Is there any funding for that program in the 2026 budget? What would applications look like? Grant sizes look like? Would community associations be the ones applying for that? Any additional information that you could provide on those funds and how they would be accessed would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And I'm happy that you're enthusiastic, Councillor, because this is an important pilot for us. Because it is a pilot and because we're waiting for the budget process to go through its course, we haven't developed the specific criteria, but we do envision it being somewhat similar to the provincial community emergency grant program, but with some localized tweaks. One of the ones I mentioned was that we will not require that groups applying have a specific emergency management mandate, because what we find in Ottawa is that there are a range of social services providers who don't have an emergency management mandate, but who do emergency management during an emergency. We envision that it will be groups like the ones that delegated today that will likely apply: community associations, faith-based groups, other organized entities, anyone who has the capacity and willingness to help. And like I said, it would be for, equipment, supplies, training, exercise, even communications equipment would be appropriate. And to your point, we think this will be particularly important in rural communities because there are unique challenges to your area, including longer distances and less community-based facilities, if I can say that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Beth. And just while I have the floor, very quickly, we heard from Team Rubicon today, and I've come across some other organizations in the course of my time as councillor who respond to emergencies and do a great job in doing that. What are the considerations that you make when entering into memorandums and such with organizations like this, and does that process have a budget component to it? Like when you enter into a memorandum with an organization like that, does that save the city money? Are we now not putting out resources that we would otherwise have to? And I know that I've been in meetings with you where you've clearly indicated that volunteer structures cannot be official redundancies in the emergency response from the city. So I was just wondering if you could briefly touch on that as well. And that's my last question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So very briefly, and it's a great question, the city has probably 3 levels of volunteer types that we work with. The first is organized non-governmental organizations like Team Rubicon, like St. John's Ambulance. These are incorporated agencies. They have certification programs, insurance, liability, things like that. These are the groups with which we enter into formal agreements. And the agreements do normally include a small cost recovery component. The second level of group is more like the Respond Ottawa delegation that we heard today. So they're still organized entities, but they don't have an emergency management mandate. They're not incorporated as such. And so we tend to partner with them less formally, where it's more about information sharing, capacity building, and best practices. And then there's a third level, which we mobilize only during very severe emergencies, which is sort of what the community calls spontaneous volunteers. So we'll put a call out. Actually, Councillor, in your ward, you're a perfect example. We'll put a call out to help sandbag. And then typically what we'll do is have one of those incorporated NGOs oversee the sandbagging operations for safety and security. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Lulov.
Thanks, Chair. As we work through this 2026 draft operating budget, I want to take a moment to recognize the incredible work of our first responders in bylaw, fire, and the paramedic services. These are people who show up every single day, often in the most difficult circumstances, and the demands placed on them continue to grow, as we're hearing today. Their mental health and overall well-being are essential not only for their safety, but for the quality of service that they provide to our residents. It's our responsibility to ensure that the supports are in place to meet the realities of the job. So as I ask every year, can staff outline how the 2026 draft operating budget supports the mental health and well-being of our first responders, starting with bylaw, then fire, then paramedic service, and what specific investments or programs are being enhanced or introduced to strengthen the support?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for the question. Yes, as Paul said earlier, the wellness of our staff is the number one priority for us. And, we do many different things. I mean, including our check-ins in the morning to make sure that everybody's, well and looking after themselves. But we also have our peer support network as well, which we've our kickoff was last year for that, so we're pretty new at this, but it's we have learned from paramedics experience, and they've helped to set up our program. So so far it's everything's going very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For fire services, you're absolutely right. It's an ongoing opportunity for us to ensure the wellness for our members. We continue, the budget still allots opportunities for investment in our peer support program, our WFI, which is our wellness fitness initiative with our association. And just one note I wanted to share with committee was the introduction of a on-staff full-time psychologist. We're certainly seeing extreme positives from that introduction of early intervention, early opportunities to deal with staff that, before they go off work, having that discussion, getting the right help, that right support. So I do want to thank committee for that investment last year.
Chair, the Ottawa Paramedic Service over the last couple of years has invested in a culture strategy, which has resulted in a culture action plan, and recognizing that the organizational culture is part of the health, the wellness of staff. So we continue to dedicate resources to that initiative. So that's one item. Second item is as part of the 2024-2025 budget. Not exactly sure which one. Council supported our service in permitting the 3 FTEs dedicated to mental wellness. Part one was to recruit a psychologist that we're absolutely excited to have. The second element is that we're just in the process of announcing the 2 health clinicians, mental health clinicians, that are going to support our psychologist. So we're looking at a wraparound where we have a psychologist, a social worker, and an occupational therapist to actually provide an enhanced service to our service. And the last piece is a reference that Roger mentioned regarding the peer support. Our commitment is to our peer support group, which has been in existence for over 10 years, to the quality of that service that it provides on a peer level to staff. We will continue to invest in our peer support group because we see the value of it. So putting those things together, we're developing and we're starting to mature a wellness strategy, which incorporates the professionals in terms of the psychologists and mental health practitioners, our peer support group, and looking at other ways that we can support our individuals both in-house and externally if there's a requirement for those professional services, which may be resulting in an operational stress injury clinic. So we've been in discussions with the Royal Ottawa to provide those services as well to our staff. So thank you.
And Chair, if I could just add as well, just to put in a plug for our department, I think one of the great benefit of having these services together within this department is that we learn from each other. And there's so much innovation and ideas that are coming up through these service areas, which Paul, Pierre, and Roger have all highlighted here. But we learn off of one another too in terms of our peer support programs, rolling out these new psychologist positions in fire and paramedics in terms of how we're establishing these programs and learning off of each other. So I just want to highlight that as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. I do want to add that while peer support programs can play an important role in the short term, especially among a team that's just been through a critical incident, I continue to hear from many first responders in all three services who don't truly feel supported, and I understand that you're working on this. I often liken peer support to a person swimming out to help somebody who's drowning. As a former lifeguard, I like this analogy. Too often you end up with a double drowning. we should not be placing that kind of emotional weight on colleagues who are already carrying so much themselves. So I strongly encourage each service to continue making real investments in professional mental health support. Our bylaw officers, firefighters, and paramedics deserve access to qualified clinicians who can help them cope with the trauma and the stress that come with their work. They serve our residents with courage and compassion. And so the least that we can do is ensure that they have the professional support they need to stay healthy and safe. There's lots of research in this space, lots of research that shows that peer support is not necessarily the best option and places the onus on people that perhaps aren't prepared to properly deal with some of the issues that come up in complex situations with things like PTSD. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I offer my questions and comments, does anyone else wish to speak at this time? Okay, just a few questions, if I may. Just first of all, I'd like to piggyback on what Councillor Droche said about school zones. We need better coordination in this city between bylaw and the police. It's impossible to have a plan for 400 schools. It's not reasonable, but there are school zones where the problem is much more prevalent than others. And when I reach out to the police in August and I say, what's your plan? They have no idea. They have no resources. There is no plan. Bylaw does what they can, and Bylaw has been much more responsive. But, you know, pre-COVID, there was actually a coordinated plan in place for 2 weeks in school zones, and the hot spots would be visited. And we need to get back to that because it's not a one-off to the one school that Councillor Droche mentioned. It's in many wards, if not all wards, and councillors can recommend which school zones we hear from. So not a budget ask, but just that is a huge bugaboo of mine, is that, again, it's a transition for everyone in the neighborhood where summer's coming to an end. People are back to work, back to school, new school routes, vulnerable road users out there on the street walking and biking. And it's part of the education plan, in addition to enforcement, that we've got to get back on track. Just a few questions. When the Ottawa Fire Service is called to provide assistance when there's been an incident on a 400 series highway, my understanding is the costs associated with providing that service are refunded by the provincial government. Is that true? And if that's the case, how do we determine what those costs are? Do we have an agreement with the province, or we just simply submit a bill and it gets paid?
Chair, thank you for that question. Yes, we are. Anytime we respond on a 400 series highway, we do invoice the province for our services. There's a provincial equation that is established at the start of each year, taken into cost of living. So it charges, and please don't quote me because I don't process it each day, but it's in and around $450 an hour per apparatus, and it does the economic increases each year is included as part of that memorandum of understanding.
Thank you. Council is very familiar with OC Transpo fleet. We've had a discussion for years about purchasing different fleet, the life cycle of fleet. With respect to fire trucks and paramedic vehicles in particular, do we have do we purchase fleet spread out over the course of the life cycle as well, so that we're renewing a small section of vehicles every other year, not to put on one big purchase at one time? And what are the average life cycles for a fire truck and an ambulance?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start, then I'll pass it over to my colleague. So the fire truck industry is unique in the fact we've seen a lot of changes since COVID, and there's been a lot of changes in delivery times. On average, a fire truck, a pumper truck, I'm just going to keep this simple, should last anywhere from 15 to 20 years. We work closely with fleet services looking at the life cycling plan. And we do augment and update those on a regular regular basis with fleet services. Some of the challenges that we've had, and I think it was addressed earlier, is a build out time, which normally a fire truck would take a year to build out. There's so much pressure in the industry right now that it's anywhere from 2 to 3 years now from a build out. So we're having to look further and further ahead and in advance when we're starting to plan our life cycling for heavy fleet vehicles.
Chair, ambulances are part of the life cycle with fleet. We have an agreement with the province with respect to the life cycle, which is 54 months. And during that period of time, that over the 54 months, fleet does do a costing in terms of its replacement. So the capital expenditure is part one, and then over the next 54 months, that vehicle is fully replaced through the life cycle program.
Okay, thank you for that. Completely changing gears, spay and neuter clinics. We've had some challenges in the past offering consistent service and staffing. Mr. Chapman, are you able to give us an update? What does 2026 look like in this capacity?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, I don't have a positive update for you. The veterinarian that we had or thought we had secured to start earlier this year has decided not to take the position. So we're still in the recruitment process. Again, we're not the only clinic. There is a shortage of veterinarians across the province. Everybody has got the same challenge in hiring veterinarians. So we've done what we can to try and attract a full-time veterinarian for our clinic. But in the interim, we still have the plan in place. We're still keeping up with the surgery requests that we have, not at the capacity that we would with a full-time vet there, but we do have locum vets that we contract out. So they'll come in for a one-day shift. And just for a quick example, depending on the type of animal and whether it's a male or female, but we do between 18 and 22 surgeries a day. With the locum vet, we may only be doing between 10 and 12. So that's the gap when you don't have somebody who does it on a daily basis. The surgeries take a little bit more time. So we're still operating at 4 days a week, but certainly not doing the same amount of surgeries we would with a full-time veterinarian there.
And the mobile clinics are still part of the equation?
The mobile clinics aren't ours. Those are through the Ottawa Humane Society.
Okay, pardon me. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so I just want to thank staff again for the presentation today. To echo similar comments to my colleagues, we very much appreciate the professional service of bylaw and fire and paramedics and emergency preparedness. You've heard from my colleagues. They've cited specific examples where you and your staff have served within the community, and there's a great appreciation of the community to you and for the services that you offer. I appreciate the draft budget that's before us. I do think it is aligned with the strategic priorities that council's endorsed. And we've clearly seen that investments this term of council have yielded very good results. Can't argue with data. The data indicates that response times are getting better. Code zeros or level zeros are down significantly, and we continue to provide excellent service to the people of Ottawa. So I do recommend to my colleagues that we support this budget and recommend that council approve it on December the 10th. Earlier this morning, Councillor Vice Chair Hill read in the roadmap. We're going to deal with the entire budget together. No one has asked for any piece to be dissected out, so we will vote on that at this time. Does anyone need it read? Or maybe we can put it on the screen if that's possible. Just get it on the screen and then I'll call it. Okay. So we see that there. Okay, thanks very much. So therefore be resolved pursuant to subsection 89.3 of the procedure bylaw, the Emergency Preparedness Protective Services Committee approved that the budget that was the first motion. So It's the budget roadmap before us. Is that matter carried? Thank you very
Carried.
much. Thank you. Okay, in-camera items, item 5. There are no in-camera items that I'm aware of. Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Are there any inquiries? None. Okay, and I don't believe there's any other business. So again, matters approved today will be heard by City Council on December the 10th. Our next meeting is tentative date is February the 19th. And if you recall, colleagues, there were 2 notices of motion from colleagues read in our last meeting. We will deal with those along with other business at our next meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.